Chapter 1. Whispers on Wrinkled Paper. Snow fell in lazy, swirling patterns, covering the town of Evergreen in a pristine blanket of white. The little town seemed to exhale a sigh of peace with every flake. Strings of twinkling lights adorned rooftops, and wreaths hung on nearly every door. Yet, for two individuals, the holiday cheer only deepened the ache of their loneliness. At the edge of Evergreen, nestled between a toy shop and a bakery that smelled perpetually of cinnamon, stood a humble post office. Its brass bell jingled faintly as a young woman stepped inside. Emma Carter, wrapped in a burgundy scarf, carried an envelope clutched tightly in her hands. It wasn't addressed to anyone in particular, just a single name scrawled in her neat handwriting: Santa Claus. Emma wasn't one to indulge in childish fantasies, but this year was different. After a string of heartbreaks and the loss of her job in the city, she had returned to Evergreen seeking solace, only to find herself lonelier than ever. Writing a letter to Santa had been a whim, a desperate attempt to pour out the feelings she couldn't share with anyone else. Her letter contained more than the usual Christmas wishes. It was a confession, a yearning for something she couldn't quite articulate. She'd written about her longing for connection, for a spark of magic to reignite her faith in love and herself. Folding the paper with care, she slid it into the envelope, sealed it, and hesitated before dropping it into the old red mailbox. Across town, another letter was being written. Alex Hayes, a quiet man with a penchant for routine, sat in his small apartment above the town's bookstore. His desk was cluttered with pens and unfinished sketches, remnants of his dream to become an illustrator, a dream he'd let fade after a painful breakup. This Christmas, his only company was his golden retriever, Bailey, who now watched him intently from the corner of the room. Alex wasn't entirely sure why he was writing to Santa. Perhaps it was the same reason he still kept the snow globe his ex-girlfriend had given him, even though he'd hidden it in a drawer. Maybe he hoped the act of writing would help him untangle the mess of emotions he'd bottled up. His letter wasn't a list of requests either. It was a simple question posed to the universe. What comes next? He tucked his letter into an envelope and scribbled Santa Claus across the front. For good measure, he added a sketch of a reindeer on the back. It felt silly, but he smiled anyway. On his way to drop it off, he paused by a display of Christmas cards in the bookstore. One, with golden lettering and an illustration of a sleigh, caught his eye. He slipped it into his coat pocket before heading out into the cold. At the post office, fate worked its quiet magic. A gust of wind blew through the door as Alex stepped in, and Emma was already there, standing at the counter, her cheeks flushed from the cold. Neither noticed the other, nor did they see the harried postal clerk juggling a pile of letters that tumbled onto the floor. In the shuffle, two envelopes switched places, indistinguishable but for the handwriting on their fronts. The bell jingled again as Emma left, her scarf trailing behind her. Alex lingered a moment, mailing his letter and buying a stamp for the card he'd chosen. He glanced at the red mailbox, wondering for a fleeting second if his letter would even make it to the North Pole. Then, shaking off the thought, he left to return home. By nightfall, the letters had begun their unexpected journeys. The one addressed by Emma found its way to Alex's mailbox, while Alex's letter ended up on Emma's kitchen table. Neither knew the other existed yet, but the universe had plans. Plans hidden in the ink of their words and the twists of their fates. As the town of Evergreen fell silent under its snowy blanket, two lives began to move in a direction neither had anticipated, spurred on by whispers written on wrinkled paper. Chapter 2. The North Pole Conundrum. The morning sun crept over the snow-dusted rooftops of Evergreen, casting a golden glow on the icicles dangling from eaves. Emma stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, her thoughts drifting back to the letter she had dropped off the day before. She hadn't expected much from the act, a fleeting catharsis, maybe, But as she opened her mailbox and saw a letter addressed to her in an unfamiliar hand, a flicker of curiosity sparked. Her name wasn't on the envelope, nor was there a return address. It was simply marked, "To Santa's Helper." The handwriting was slanted and precise, as though the writer had spent extra time crafting each letter. She turned it over in her hands, the paper slightly rough beneath her fingers, and debated whether opening it would be a breach of some unspoken rule. Yet the pull was irresistible. Sliding her finger under the flap, she unfolded the letter and began to read. The words unfolded like a mystery, each line hinting at a story she didn't know but felt compelled to unravel. The letter spoke of uncertainty, of a person standing at a crossroads and unsure of which path to take. It mentioned dreams abandoned, the ache of solitude, and a yearning to rediscover something, though what that something was remained elusive. At the bottom of the page was a sketch of a reindeer, its antlers stretching toward the stars. Emma's brow furrowed. This wasn't her letter. Whoever had written it wasn't addressing Santa in the way children might. This was something deeper, a glimpse into a stranger's soul. She glanced at the envelope again and realized the clerk at the post office must have made a mistake. Someone else had her letter, which meant they now held her most vulnerable thoughts. Across town, Alex was having a similar revelation. Sitting on his couch with Bailey at his feet, he unfolded a letter that was most certainly not his own. The handwriting was tidy but flowing, as though the writer's emotions had carried her pen across the page. She wrote about longing for connection and the courage to open her heart again. She described the loneliness that came with returning to a place that felt familiar but foreign, like visiting an old friend who had moved on without you. Alex leaned back, running a hand through his hair. He reread the letter, intrigued by the raw honesty within its lines. There was something magnetic about the vulnerability, a voice reaching out through the cold, hoping to be heard. Yet what puzzled him most was the faint mark at the bottom of the page, a series of numbers written so lightly they were nearly invisible. They formed a code, though he couldn't decipher its meaning. He placed the letter on his coffee table and stared at it, wondering what kind of person would write such words to Santa. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a simple mix-up. Something about the letter felt intentional, as though it had found its way to him for a reason. The day passed in quiet contemplation for both Emma and Alex. Emma couldn't resist the urge to read the letter again, trying to piece together who might have written it. The reindeer sketch struck her as whimsical yet thoughtful, and she found herself wondering if its creator had once been an artist. Her mind drifted to the bookstore in town, where an older man often sold handmade cards featuring sketches similar in style. Perhaps he knew something? Meanwhile, Alex's curiosity about the code grew. He retrieved an old notebook from his shelf, flipping through pages of forgotten sketches and notes until he found a clean sheet. Carefully, he copied the numbers, their faint lines now bolder under his pencil. They didn't form a date or any sequence he recognized. What if they were coordinates? Or a password? The possibilities intrigued him. As twilight settled over Evergreen, both Emma and Alex felt a growing need to act. Emma bundled up in her coat and scarf, determined to visit the bookstore the next morning. Alex, on the other hand, decided to make his way to the post office, hoping to find some explanation for the mix-up. Neither realized that their paths were set to converge in ways neither could predict. Outside, the snow began to fall again, softening the edges of the world. Evergreen streets glistened under the glow of Christmas lights, and the town itself seemed to hum with anticipation. Somewhere within its quiet corners, two strangers were about to embark on an unexpected journey, one sparked by the smallest of errors and guided by the faintest of whispers. Chapter 3: Threads of a Broken Heart. The dawn broke over Evergreen, casting a silvery light that made the snowdrifts sparkle like powdered diamonds. The crisp morning air carried a hush, as if the world itself paused to listen. For Emma and Alex, it was the start of a day they would long remember. A day of searching, unraveling, and tentative hope. Emma stood before the bookstore's frost-kissed window, her breath fogging the glass as she peered inside. The shop's warm interior was aglow with tiny fairy lights strung along towering shelves. The faint scent of old pages and pine wreaths wafted through the air as she stepped inside. Mr. Alden, the proprietor, greeted her with a nod, his glasses perched precariously on the edge of his nose. He was meticulously arranging a display of Christmas cards when Emma approached. Among them, her eye caught a few designs featuring sketches similar to the one she had seen on the mysterious letter. "Beautiful work," she said softly, her voice laced with curiosity. "Do you know who creates these?" Mr. Alden paused, his hands lingering over the display. "A local artist. Quiet fellow. He's been dropping these off for years. Lives just up the road, above the shop's back alley." His eyes twinkled. "Why do you ask?" Emma hesitated, the letter tucked safely in her pocket. "I'm just curious about his work. It's very moving." The old man smiled knowingly but said no more, leaving Emma to wander the aisles. She lingered for a moment, gazing at the cards and wondering about the artist who had drawn the reindeer on the letter. Her next step was clear. She needed to meet him. Across town, Alex stood in the dimly lit post office, his gloved hands gripping the counter. The clerk, a harried woman named Karen, was busy sorting a pile of parcels. Alex's letter, or rather, the letter that wasn't his, was folded neatly in his coat pocket. "Excuse me," he said, clearing his throat. "I think there was a mix-up with the mail. I received a letter that wasn't meant for me." Karen glanced up, her expression a mixture of curiosity and weariness. "Happens more often than you'd think this time of year. Do you have it with you?" He hesitated. There was something oddly personal about handing over the letter, as though he were exposing a secret that wasn't entirely his to share. Finally, he placed it on the counter, the handwriting facing up. Karen examined it for a moment before shaking her head. "No return address," she muttered. "And it's not postmarked. Looks like someone dropped it off here in person." Alex frowned. "In person?" She nodded, pushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "Happens sometimes. People trust the old mailbox more than they do the online systems." "I'm sorry, but there's not much more I can tell you." Disappointed but no less intrigued, Alex left the post office. As he walked home, the numbers from the letter's faint code lingered in his mind. He jotted them down on a scrap of paper and carried it with him, unable to shake the feeling that it held some deeper meaning. By midday, both Emma and Alex found themselves drawn toward the same destination. Emma's resolve led her to the alley behind the bookstore, where a rickety staircase climbed to a second-story apartment. She hesitated at the base, glancing upward at the frosted windows. Meanwhile, Alex, armed with a growing curiosity about the woman behind the letter, decided to take a walk to clear his thoughts. He found himself wandering past the bookstore, Bailey trotting faithfully by his side. As he rounded the corner, he noticed a figure standing in the alley. A woman bundled in a burgundy scarf, staring at the staircase. Their eyes met briefly. Emma offered a polite nod, though her heart skipped an inexplicable beat. She'd seen him before, she realized, once or twice around town, always with the golden retriever in tow. There was a quiet strength about him, a steadiness that contrasted with her own restless energy. Alex nodded back, recognizing her from the post office. Something about her seemed familiar, as though they had shared a moment he couldn't quite place. Yet he didn't stop to speak, instead continuing down the street. Emma turned back to the staircase, her determination returning. She climbed the creaking steps and knocked gently on the door. A moment passed, then another, before it creaked open slightly. The man who appeared was younger than she expected, with paint-smeared hands and tired eyes that widened slightly at the sight of her. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice cautious but kind. Emma hesitated, suddenly unsure of what to say. The letter burned in her pocket, and she clutched it tightly. I think you might have created something that found its way to me." His brow furrowed, but before he could reply, Emma pulled the letter from her pocket and held it out. The reindeer sketch seemed to glimmer in the dim light, a thread connecting two strangers who were about to discover just how tangled their lives had become. As the snow fell heavier that evening, Alex sat at his desk, staring at the numbers once more. He didn't know yet that the woman he had passed earlier held the key to the mystery, a mystery that would soon intertwine their broken hearts and set them on an unexpected path of healing and discovery. Chapter 4: Ink Blots and Secret Codes. The snow had transformed Evergreen into a monochrome masterpiece by the time Emma left the apartment above the bookstore. The artist, a shy, soft-spoken man named Liam, had been as puzzled as she was about the letter. While the reindeer sketch bore a resemblance to his work, he swore he hadn't drawn it. He'd even pulled out a small sketchbook to show her his designs, but none matched the one she'd shown him. Still, the encounter had given Emma something she hadn't expected, a sense of possibility. The mystery wasn't solved, but it wasn't a dead end either. As she walked home through the quiet streets, the letter folded in her pocket seemed heavier than before. She couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was nudging her towards something, or someone. She replayed her brief meeting with Liam in her mind, thinking of the way he'd examined the letter, as though trying to decipher a language he'd long forgotten. Meanwhile, across town, Alex was hunched over his desk, Bailey snoozing by the fire. He had spent hours poring over the numbers from the letter, but they refused to reveal their secret. He'd tried simple substitutions, thought about dates, and even considered that they might represent coordinates. Nothing fit. Frustrated, he leaned back in his chair, staring at the faint code as though willing it to speak. Alex wasn't the type to give up easily. His career as an illustrator, brief and filled with disappointment, had taught him resilience. He pulled out his phone and began researching ciphers, searching for patterns and techniques he might have overlooked. It was only when Bailey nudged his leg, demanding attention, that Alex realized how late it had grown. "All right, buddy," he said with a sigh, scratching the dog's ears. "I guess we both need a break." The next day dawned with a golden light that made the snow seem to shimmer. Emma decided to take her letter to someone who might have more insight. Her old high school librarian, Mrs. Callahan. The retired librarian had always been a wellspring of wisdom, with a knack for unraveling puzzles and an encyclopedic knowledge of seemingly everything. If anyone could make sense of the sketch and its hidden message, it would be her. Mrs. Callahan lived in a charming brick house at the edge of town, its windows framed by evergreen garlands. When Emma arrived, she was greeted with a warm hug and the smell of freshly baked cookies. "My dear Emma," Mrs. Callahan said, guiding her to a cozy armchair by the fireplace. "It's been too long. What brings you here on such a frosty morning?" Emma pulled the letter from her pocket, smoothing it out carefully. "I found this by accident, but I think it might be more than just a simple letter. There's something about it that feels intentional." Mrs. Callahan adjusted her glasses and studied the page with a discerning eye. She traced the faint numbers with her finger, murmuring softly. "This is curious," she said at last. "The numbers appear to be part of a cipher, though I'd need more context to be sure. And this reindeer, it's beautifully drawn. Do you know the artist?" Emma shook her head. "I thought I did, but it turns out I was wrong. It's all a bit of a mystery." The older woman smiled knowingly. "Well, my dear, some mysteries are meant to be solved, and others are meant to lead us somewhere unexpected. Perhaps this is both." She reached for a notebook and began jotting down the numbers, her movements deliberate. I'll see what I can decipher, but you might consider who else this letter might connect you to. Often, the answers are closer than we think. That same afternoon, Alex found himself drawn to the bookstore, partly out of habit and partly out of curiosity. He hadn't forgotten the woman he'd seen in the alley, her scarf a vivid streak of burgundy against the snow. There was something about her that lingered in his mind, a familiarity he couldn't place. As he browsed the shelves, he overheard a conversation between Mr. Alden and a customer. They were discussing Christmas cards, specifically the ones featuring hand-drawn sketches. These have always been popular, Mr. Alden was saying. Liam has a real talent for capturing the spirit of the season. Alex's ears perked up. He approached the counter and picked up one of the cards. The artwork was striking, but it wasn't the same style as the sketch on the letter. Still, it was close enough to make him wonder if the two might be connected. "Do you know if Liam takes commissions?" Alex asked casually. Mr. Alden chuckled. "He's not much for requests, but he's always willing to talk about his work. You might find him upstairs if you're interested." Alex nodded his thanks and left the shop, deciding to take Bailey for a walk instead of confronting the artist just yet. He had a feeling the puzzle wasn't ready to be solved, not until more pieces revealed themselves. By evening, Emma received a call from Mrs. Callahan. "I've made some progress," the librarian said, her voice tinged with excitement. "The numbers appear to be coordinates, though they're incomplete. Do you recall seeing anything else on the letter that might fill in the blanks?" Emma thought for a moment, then remembered the faint lines beneath the reindeer sketch. She hadn't paid much attention to them before, assuming they were part of the illustration. "I'll check and let you know," she said, thanking Mrs. Callahan before hanging up. As she held the letter under a lamp, the faint lines seemed to glow with a subtle clarity. They weren't random at all, but rather a map of sorts, with tiny symbols marking various points. Her heart raced as she realized the truth. This letter wasn't just a message, it was an invitation. Somewhere in Evergreen, Alex sat at his desk, staring at his own copy of the numbers. Though he didn't yet know it, his journey and Emma's were about to converge in a way that neither could have foreseen. The threads of the mystery were tightening, pulling them closer to a shared destiny. Chapter 5: A Stranger's Wish. The streets of Evergreen lay cloaked in snow, their icy edges glinting under the soft glow of lamplight. The air carried the scent of fresh pine and distant chimney smoke. Emma held the letter tightly in her gloved hand, its secrets now partially revealed. The map etched faintly beneath the reindeer sketch had awakened something within her. A pull toward discovery, an irresistible urge to follow wherever it might lead. Mrs. Callahan's voice echoed in her mind. "The answers are closer than we think." Emma resolved to unravel the mystery piece by piece. That night, she traced the faint lines of the map again, her thoughts racing. The symbols, though tiny, seemed to correspond to specific landmarks she recognized. The town square, the bridge by Miller's Pond, and the forest clearing just beyond the northern ridge. But there were others she couldn't quite place. By morning, her determination crystallized into action. She bundled up and headed out, following the map's first obvious mark, the bridge. On the other side of town, Alex was nursing his own restless curiosity. Bailey trotted beside him, his tail wagging enthusiastically as they meandered through the snowy streets. Alex's copy of the letter was tucked safely in his coat pocket, the coordinates scribbled on a scrap of paper he'd been carrying everywhere. His attempts to decipher them had led to more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. The mystery demanded to be solved. He hadn't planned on heading toward the bridge, but his feet seemed to carry him there unbidden. Something about the place felt significant, though he couldn't explain why. As he approached, the sound of crunching snow underfoot was joined by a softer, lighter rhythm. He looked up and saw her. Emma's burgundy scarf stood out against the white backdrop, a vivid thread weaving through the wintry landscape. She was leaning against the bridge's railing, staring down at the partially frozen creek below. Her expression was thoughtful, as though she too was chasing something just out of reach. Alex hesitated for a moment before calling out, his voice carrying across the stillness. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Emma turned, startled. Recognition flickered in her eyes, followed by something warmer. "It is," she replied, offering a faint smile. "A bit cold, though." Bailey bounded forward, his exuberance breaking the ice between them. Emma knelt to scratch behind his ears, laughing softly. "Well, hello there. And who might you be?" "That's Bailey," Alex said, stepping closer. "He's a terrible secret keeper, so don't tell him anything important." Emma chuckled, standing. "I'll keep that in mind." She studied Alex for a moment, her gaze lingering on his eyes. They were warm, she noticed, like the first rays of sunlight after a long storm. "I think I've seen you around town before. You're always with him, aren't you?" Alex nodded. "Guilty as charged. And you're the one I saw near the bookstore the other day, right? By the alley?" Emma's smile faltered slightly, but she nodded. "That was me. I was looking for someone who might," she hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Might be able to help with something." "Funny," Alex said, his tone laced with curiosity. "I'm working on something that's got me running all over town too. Feels like Evergreen's hiding secrets I didn't even know existed." For a moment, their eyes met, and Emma wondered if he might understand her situation more than she'd anticipated. But before she could say anything, Bailey's sudden bark broke the spell. He was pawing at something near the base of the bridge. "What's he found?" Emma asked, following Alex as he knelt to investigate. Bailey's discovery was small but intriguing. A scrap of paper, damp but legible, with faint numbers scrawled across its surface. Alex's breath hitched. He pulled out his own scrap of paper and compared the numbers. They matched perfectly. "Where did you find this?" Emma asked, her curiosity sharpening. Alex hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "It was part of a letter," he admitted. "Or at least, I think it was. Someone left it in my mailbox by mistake." Emma's hand instinctively went to her pocket, where her own letter rested. "That's unusual," she said carefully. "What kind of letter?" "It's hard to explain," Alex said, studying her closely. "But I think it's connected to something bigger. I've been trying to piece it together, but I'm still missing." He trailed off, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Wait, do you know something about this?" Emma hesitated, torn between caution and a growing sense of trust. Finally, she reached into her pocket and unfolded the letter. Alex's eyes widened as he recognized the reindeer sketch and the faint map lines beneath it. "So it wasn't just me," he said softly. "There are two of them." Emma nodded. "It seems that way, and I think they're meant to lead us somewhere." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their discovery settling over them. The snow fell gently around them, a soft hush that seemed to urge them forward. "I think we're meant to solve this together," Alex said finally, his voice steady. "Whatever this is, it's not a coincidence." Emma glanced down at the letter in her hands, then back at Alex. For the first time in a long while, she felt the stirrings of something she'd almost forgotten. "Hope. All right," she said, her smile returning. "Let's figure it out." Chapter 6. When Dreams Collide. The sky over Evergreen had turned a steel gray by the time Alex and Emma left the bridge. They'd exchanged few words after their mutual revelation, but their steps had fallen into an easy rhythm, the unspoken weight of the letters drawing them together. The map's faint lines had led them toward the forest just north of town, a place that felt both familiar and shrouded in mystery. The forest loomed ahead, its tall pines swaying in the biting wind. Snow clung to the branches, muffling their footsteps as they crossed the threshold of trees. Bailey bounded ahead, his excitement a sharp contrast to the cautious pace of his companions. Alex kept his eyes on the trail, while Emma's gaze darted to the map she carried. She had redrawn its lines onto sturdier paper, adding small notes where landmarks matched the symbols. "Here," she said, stopping abruptly. She pointed to a spot where the map indicated a clearing. "This is the first mark. It's not far now." Alex nodded, his breath visible in the cold air. "You seem to have a knack for this," he said. "Have you always been good at solving puzzles?" Emma's lips curved into a faint smile. "Let's just say I've had practice. Life has a way of throwing you puzzles whether you want them or not." They pressed on, the path narrowing as the trees closed in around them. The air grew still, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Then, suddenly, they emerged into the clearing. It was a circular space, the snow undisturbed except for a single, curious detail. A small wooden box, half buried near the base of an ancient oak. Emma's heart quickened as she knelt to brush away the snow. The box was simple, its surface worn smooth by time, but it bore a carved symbol that matched one of the marks on the map. She glanced up at Alex, who had crouched beside her, his expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Do you think it's safe?" he asked. Emma nodded. "I think it's meant for us." With careful hands, she lifted the lid. Inside was a folded piece of parchment and a small brass key. The parchment was brittle but intact, its edges curling slightly as Emma unfolded it. Her eyes scanned the neat handwriting, her breath catching as she read the words aloud. "To the one who follows the thread, your journey is far from over. Each step will bring you closer to the truth, but only if you walk together. Trust the map, trust each other, and the answers will find you." Alex reached for the key, turning it over in his hands. "Do you think this opens something nearby?" Emma shook her head. "I'm not sure, but I don't think so. The map doesn't mark anything else in the forest. Maybe it's for another location." Bailey's bark interrupted their thoughts. The dog had wandered to the edge of the clearing and was pawing at something half hidden beneath the snow. Alex hurried over, Emma close behind, and together they uncovered a second clue. A flat stone with another carved symbol, this one resembling a compass rose. "Another piece of the puzzle," Alex murmured. Emma studied the stone, her mind racing. "It's pointing west," she said. "If the map is accurate, the next mark should be near Miller's Pond." Alex glanced at the sky, where the light was beginning to fade. "It'll be dark soon. Do you think we should keep going?" Emma hesitated. The forest felt different now, its quiet no longer serene but watchful. Yet the pull of the mystery was stronger than her unease. "Let's at least get to the edge of the woods," she said. "We can decide from there." The journey westward was uneventful at first, but as they neared the forest's edge, a strange sound broke the stillness. It was faint but unmistakable, the sound of bells, their chimes soft and haunting. Alex and Emma exchanged a glance, their unease mirrored in each other's eyes. "Is there a house nearby?" Alex asked, his voice low. Emma shook her head. "Not that I know of. This part of the forest is supposed to be empty." Bailey's ears perked up, and he began to trot toward the sound, his tail wagging cautiously. Alex called after him, but the dog didn't stop. They had no choice but to follow. The bells grew louder as they moved, until they came upon a small, dilapidated cabin hidden among the trees. Its windows were dark, its roof sagging under the weight of snow. The bells, they realized, were hanging from the eaves, swaying gently in the breeze. "This isn't on the map," Emma whispered. Alex frowned. "Do you think we should go inside?" Before Emma could answer, Bailey nosed the cabin door, which creaked open slightly. A sliver of golden light spilled out, illuminating the snow. Emma and Alex exchanged a tense look, then stepped inside together. The interior was warm, a sharp contrast to the cold outside. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, and a faint scent of cinnamon filled the air. On a small table in the center of the room lay a book, its leather cover embossed with the same compass rose symbol they'd found on the stone. Emma's hand trembled slightly as she reached for the book. She opened it to the first page, where more handwritten words awaited them. The path you walk is one of trust and courage. Each clue will lead you closer, but beware. Not all who follow the thread do so with good intent. Alex's jaw tightened. What does that mean? Emma shook her head, her gaze fixed on the page. I don't know, but I think we're not the only ones searching for answers. Chapter 7. Snow Trails and Subtle Clues. The warmth of the cabin did little to ease the tension that had settled between Alex and Emma. The strange warnings within the book echoed in their minds as they examined their surroundings more closely. Bailey, seemingly unconcerned by the gravity of their discovery, curled up near the hearth, his tail thumping lazily against the wooden floor. Emma traced the compass rose on the book's cover with her fingertip, her thoughts racing. This place, she said softly. It feels like it's been waiting for someone. Alex leaned against the table, his gaze flicking to the shadowed corners of the cabin. Or something, he muttered. I'm not sure I like the idea of us being here alone. That message. Not all who follow the thread do so with good intent. What if we're being watched? Emma shook her head, trying to quiet the uneasy flutter in her chest. Paranoia won't help us. Besides, she added, attempting a wry smile, I don't think Bailey would let anyone sneak up on us. Alex snorted softly, but didn't look convinced. Still, he turned his attention back to the book, flipping carefully through its pages. Most were blank, save for occasional symbols and faint sketches. A star here, a tree there, that seemed to echo the markings on the map they'd been following. Halfway through, he paused, his brow furrowing. Look at this, he said, holding the book toward Emma. The page was filled with dense, looping handwriting. The ink faded, but still legible. It read, "The final key lies where the water sleeps. In the stillness, you will find clarity, but only if your heart is open to it. Beware the shadows, for they hunger for the light you carry." Emma's pulse quickened as she read the words. "Where the water sleeps," she repeated. "That must be Miller's Pond." Alex nodded, closing the book with a decisive thud. "Then that's where we're going next. Whatever this is, it's leading us there." The walk back through the forest was quieter than their earlier trek. The shadows stretched longer as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting an eerie glow through the trees. The bells on the cabin's eaves had faded into the distance, but their haunting chime lingered in Alex's mind. He kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting to see someone, or something, following them. Emma, meanwhile, clutched the book tightly against her chest, as though it might vanish if she let it go. Her thoughts were a tangled web of excitement and dread. The clues were drawing them closer to answers, but the cryptic warnings made her wonder what kind of truth they were chasing. When they finally emerged from the forest, the familiar sight of evergreen, snow-covered streets brought a measure of relief. The town seemed untouched by the strange forces they'd encountered, its quiet charm a stark contrast to the unease still clinging to them. "We should regroup," Alex said as they reached the edge of town. "Go over what we know before heading to the pond. It'll be dark soon, and I don't think stumbling around in the cold is a good idea." Emma hesitated but nodded. "You're right. Let's meet tomorrow morning." That night, sleep eluded both of them. Alex sat by his window, staring out at the snowy street below. His thoughts circled back to the book's warnings, the cryptic mention of shadows that hunger for the light you carry. What light? He didn't consider himself particularly special, just a man trying to piece together a mystery he hadn't asked for. Bailey's soft snores filled the silence, grounding him. Alex reached down to scratch behind the dog's ears, grateful for the simple companionship. Whatever lay ahead, he knew he wasn't facing it alone. Across town, Emma was seated at her small desk, the book open before her and a notepad filled with scrawled notes at her elbow. She'd copied the riddle about the water that sleeps and underlined it twice. The phrase tugged at her mind, its poetic vagueness both infuriating and intriguing. She glanced at the reindeer's sketch on the original letter, the faint map lines still visible beneath it. It struck her how deliberately everything had been placed, as though whoever orchestrated this mystery had known exactly what they were doing. But why? And for whom? Morning arrived with the sky streaked in pale gold and gray. Emma and Alex met at the edge of Miller's Pond, their breath visible in the crisp air. The pond lay still and silent, its surface frozen over except for a small patch of open water near its center. The scene was picturesque, almost tranquil, but the tension between them made it hard to appreciate the beauty. Emma unfolded the map, pointing to the symbol marked near the pond. If the book is right, the next clue should be here, somewhere near the water. Alex scanned the area, his eyes narrowing as they landed on an old boathouse at the pond's edge. That might be a good place to start, he said. They approached cautiously, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The boathouse was weathered but sturdy, its door slightly ajar. Inside, the air was damp and cold, carrying the faint scent of moss and aged wood. A rowboat sat overturned in the corner, and along one wall hung an assortment of rusted tools. It was Emma who spotted the next clue. Tucked inside an empty lantern on a high shelf was another folded parchment, this one tied with a red ribbon. She pulled it down carefully, her hands trembling slightly as she untied the ribbon and unfolded the paper. The message was brief but clear. To find what you seek, you must look beyond the surface. The light will guide you if you let it. Look beyond the surface, Alex said, frowning. What do you think it means? Emma glanced toward the patch of open water. Her heart sank. I think it means we're going to need that rowboat. With great effort, they managed to right the boat and drag it to the pond's edge. Alex used one of the oars to break through the thin layer of ice surrounding the open water, while Emma climbed into the boat, clutching the lantern they'd found. Are you sure about this? Alex asked as he joined her, his tone laced with concern. Emma met his gaze, her determination overriding her fear. If we've come this far, we can't stop now. As Alex rowed toward the center of the pond, the light from the lantern flickered, casting eerie shadows on the icy water. Emma leaned over the side, her eyes scanning the depths for any sign of their next clue. And then she saw it, a faint glimmer beneath the surface, like a shard of sunlight trapped in the icy darkness. She reached for the small brass key they'd found in the forest, a sense of purpose surging through her. There, she said, pointing. That's where we'll find it. Chapter 8. The Clockwork of Christmas. The faint glimmer beneath the water's surface seemed almost ethereal, like a secret long buried waiting to be unearthed. Alex steadied the rowboat as Emma leaned closer to the icy pond, clutching the brass key tightly in her gloved hand. The lantern's flickering light danced across the water, casting a warm glow on the sharp contrast of the winter chill. It's deeper than I thought, Emma murmured, her breath fogging the air. But there's definitely something down there. Alex tightened his grip on the oars, his muscles tense. Let's not forget the warnings. Whatever's hidden might not want to be found. Emma met his gaze, her determination unwavering. That's a risk we have to take. This is bigger than us. Alex sighed, nodding reluctantly. Okay, but we do this carefully. Emma leaned over the edge of the boat, peering into the dark water. She pulled a small length of rope from her bag, securing the brass key to one end before lowering it carefully into the water. The key shimmered faintly, its reflection twisting and bending as it sank toward the glimmer below. The moment the key touched the light, A strange ripple spread across the pond, as though the surface had turned to liquid glass. "Did you see that?" Alex asked, his voice taut. Emma nodded, her heart pounding. "Something's happening." The ripple subsided, and for a moment, everything was still. Then, with a soft click that resonated through the water, a small object rose to the surface. It was a box, no larger than a shoebox, made of intricately carved wood. The designs on its surface matched the compass rose and symbols they'd seen before. Emma reached out, her gloved fingers trembling slightly as she pulled the box into the boat. It was heavier than it looked, its surface cold and damp. She and Alex exchanged a glance before she carefully unlatched it. Inside, nestled in a bed of crimson velvet, was another piece of parchment and a curious crystal shaped like a teardrop. The parchment bore a single line of text: "Truth lies where the past and present converge. Seek the place where memories are etched in stone." Emma's brow furrowed as she read the words aloud. "Etched in stone. Do you think it means the cemetery?" Alex frowned, his gaze fixed on the crystal. It refracted the lantern's light into a cascade of colors, casting prismatic patterns onto the boat's interior. "Maybe, but what does this have to do with the treasure or the letters?" Emma shook her head, staring at the crystal. "I don't know, but every piece we've found so far feels deliberate, like a breadcrumb trail. Whoever designed this wanted us to find it." As they rowed back to the shore, the pond seemed to grow quieter, its surface now eerily smooth. The journey back to Evergreen was uneventful, yet a heavy silence hung between them. Each was lost in their own thoughts, piecing together the fragments of the puzzle. The cemetery lay on the outskirts of town, a sprawling field of weathered gravestones blanketed in snow. The wrought iron gates stood open, their hinges creaking faintly in the wind. Alex and Emma entered cautiously, their footsteps crunching softly in the stillness. "This place always felt a little unsettling," Alex admitted, his voice low. "Even when I was a kid." Emma glanced at him, a small smile playing on her lips. "I used to think cemeteries were peaceful. It's like all the noise of the world stops here." They moved deeper into the cemetery, guided by instinct more than the map. The parchment's words echoed in Emma's mind as her eyes scanned the gravestones. "Etched in stone, memories." Bailey trotted ahead, his nose to the ground. Suddenly, he stopped near a large, ornate headstone and barked. Alex and Emma hurried to his side, their breaths catching as they saw what had drawn the dog's attention. At the base of the headstone was another carving, this one an exact replica of the compass rose. Beneath it, faint words were inscribed. "Here lies the path to what you seek. The past is the key to the present." Alex crouched down, running his fingers over the carving. "There's something beneath this," he said, his voice filled with certainty. Together, they brushed away the snow, revealing a small, hidden compartment in the stone. Emma used the brass key to unlock it, her heart pounding as the cover slid open. Inside was another clue. A leather-bound journal, its pages filled with handwritten entries and sketches. Emma flipped through the journal, her eyes widening as she read. "These entries, they're about the treasure. Whoever wrote this was the one who hid it." Alex leaned closer, his curiosity piqued. "Does it say why?" Emma scanned the pages, her voice trembling slightly as she read aloud. "To those who find this, know that the journey you undertake is not just for the treasure but for the truth. The treasure was never meant to be hoarded. It was meant to reveal what was lost. Follow the final clue, and you will understand." "The final clue?" Alex asked, his brow furrowed. Emma turned to the last page, where a crude map had been drawn. It marked a location just beyond Evergreen, a place neither of them recognized. Beneath the map were the words, "Where the first light of dawn touches the earth, the truth will be revealed." The weight of their discovery settled over them as they left the cemetery. The journal and crystal felt heavy in Emma's bag, their significance both exhilarating and daunting. Alex walked beside her in silence, his thoughts a whirlwind of questions and possibilities. As they reached the edge of town, the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Alex glanced at Emma, his expression unreadable. "We're close, aren't we?" he said quietly. Emma nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Closer than we've ever been. But something tells me the hardest part is still ahead." Chapter 9. Beneath the Mistletoe Veil. The chill of December had taken full hold of the town of Willow Creek, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you long for the warmth of a crackling fire. Yet, despite the frost-laced air and the hurried footsteps of people trying to beat the snow, there was a sense of anticipation in the air. It was as if the entire town was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. In the heart of the town square stood a large oak tree, its branches bare and swaying gently in the winter breeze. Every year, the tree was the centerpiece of Willow Creek's holiday celebrations, draped in twinkling lights and shimmering ornaments. But this year, something felt different. There was a buzz of excitement, of whispers and hurried conversations, all revolving around the town's most beloved tradition, the annual letter to Santa swap. It was an event that had started years ago when a group of children had decided that they wanted to help each other with their Christmas wishes. Instead of sending letters to Santa, they thought, why not swap them? Each child would write a letter with their own deepest desires and hopes for the season, and then they would trade with someone else's letter. The idea was simple yet magical, giving children a chance to experience the joy of fulfilling someone else's wish, all while keeping the true magic of Christmas alive. This year, the event had taken on a new importance. It was not just a community tradition anymore. It had become a symbol of something larger, a reminder of the power of kindness, the beauty of selflessness, and the way the smallest gestures could create ripples of goodwill across a town. Anna and her friends, Jack, Emma, and Lucas, were excited for the event. They had all participated in the swap since they were small, but this year felt different. Perhaps it was the mystery of what might happen, or maybe it was the fact that they now understood the magic of the tradition more deeply. As they gathered near the tree, each holding their carefully pinned letters, they couldn't help but feel the weight of what was to come. "Are you ready for this?" Jack asked, his breath clouding in front of him as he held out his letter. Anna smiled, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "As ready as I'll ever be." Each of them had written their letter to Santa with the same thoughtfulness and care as every year before. But this time, their wishes weren't just for themselves. They had thought about what their friends might want, what the town might need, and even what the world might need. The letters were filled with dreams of adventure, of happiness for others, and of a world that felt a little bit kinder. As the clock struck 5, the town square began to fill with families, children, and adults alike, all holding letters in their hands. A festive cheer filled the air as everyone milled about, exchanging stories, greeting one another with hugs, and preparing for the moment when the letters would be swapped. At the center of it all stood Mrs. Jennings, the town's beloved librarian, who had overseen the letter to Santa swap for as long as anyone could remember. With her snowy white hair and twinkling eyes, she was the embodiment of the holiday spirit. She clapped her hands together and called for everyone's attention. "All right, my dear friends, it's time to begin," she called, her voice warm and inviting. The crowd hushed, and the children eagerly gathered around, their letters clutched tightly in their hands. Anna and her friends joined the circle, their eyes scanning the crowd for familiar faces. They didn't know whose letters they would receive this year, but they were excited for the mystery. There was something magical about the idea that a stranger's wish might land in your hands, a wish that you could help make come true. Mrs. Jennings gave the signal, and the swap began. One by one, The letters were passed around, and the group of children eagerly exchanged envelopes, each wondering what kind of wish they might hold. Anna's heart raced as her fingers brushed against the paper of the letter she had just received. She didn't open it immediately, feeling the anticipation build with every second that passed. Instead, she tucked the letter into her pocket, promising herself she would read it when the time felt right. The evening wore on with laughter, hot cocoa, and the sound of carolers filling the air. The Christmas spirit seemed to have wrapped itself around the town, creating a warmth that stretched far beyond the glow of the Christmas lights. Anna and Jack, surrounded by friends and family, felt a sense of contentment settle into their hearts. Despite the whirlwind of events in the past few weeks, tonight, everything felt perfectly at peace. But as the night continued, a shift began to happen, subtle but unmistakable. It started with a small conversation between Emma and Lucas about their next big move in spreading kindness. They had been brainstorming new ideas to integrate the Ripple movement into the holiday festivities, and their eyes sparkled with the potential of what they could achieve. Their passion was infectious, and soon, others began to join the conversation. Anna glanced over at Jack, her heart skipping a beat as she saw him lost in thought, watching Emma and Lucas. He turned to meet her gaze, and his expression softened. The excitement in the room, the shared joy, and the close-knit bond of their friends and family created an electric atmosphere that left her breathless. "What's on your mind?" she asked softly, stepping closer to him. Jack paused for a moment, his eyes filled with something deeper than just the festive energy around them. "I just keep thinking about how far we've come. Everything we're doing, it's not just about our town anymore. It feels like we're part of something bigger, something global." Anna smiled, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. The partnership with the Global Kindness Initiative had given them the opportunity to reach people beyond Willow Creek, to inspire others to embrace kindness on a larger scale. Yet, in this quiet moment, it was hard not to feel the magnitude of what they had accomplished and what still lay ahead. "And we're just getting started," she said, her voice filled with conviction. Jack nodded, then reached for her hand. His touch was warm and grounding, and as their fingers intertwined, Anna felt a surge of affection for him. He had been by her side through every twist and turn, offering unwavering support and encouragement. It wasn't just the movement that had flourished, it was their love. "Come on," Jack said, a playful glint in his eye. "Let's go for a walk. The night's still young, and we deserve a quiet moment." Anna agreed, and together they slipped out of the lively crowd, strolling hand in hand through the snow-covered streets. The world around them was peaceful, the gentle crunch of snow beneath their boots the only sound. The streetlights cast a soft glow over the snow, and the world seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something incredible to happen. As they walked, Anna felt a sense of gratitude wash over her. The challenges they had faced, balancing the Ripple movement with their personal lives, navigating the highs and lows of their growing relationship, had all been worth it. This moment, beneath the twinkling stars and the quiet whispers of the winter night, felt like a promise that their love, just like their mission, would continue to grow and evolve. They paused for a moment by the town's central square, where the Christmas tree stood tall, adorned with shimmering lights and colorful ornaments. The tree seemed to glow with life, and as Anna gazed at it, she couldn't help but think about the way it symbolized everything they had been working toward: unity, hope, and the warmth that could arise even in the coldest of seasons. "Do you ever think about how all of this started?" Anna asked, her voice quiet but thoughtful. Jack smiled, looking at the tree. "All the time. From that first letter to Santa, I had no idea it would lead to this. I just wanted to make a difference. But I think I found something even more important along the way." Anna turned to him, her heart fluttering in her chest. "What's that?" "You." Jack said simply, his voice sincere. "You've always been the heart of this movement. The way you inspire people, the way you believe in kindness, it's contagious. I'm just glad I get to be a part of it." A warmth spread through Anna at his words, and she squeezed his hand tightly, feeling her love for him deepen with every passing moment. "I couldn't have done it without you, Jack. You've been my rock. You always believe in us, even when the road gets tough." They stood there in silence for a few moments, simply soaking in the beauty of the night and the feeling of being together. Despite everything that had happened, despite the challenges ahead, Anna knew that this love was something that would never falter. It was their foundation, just as strong and unwavering as the community they were building. "Do you think it's possible for something like this to be real?" Anna asked softly, her voice filled with wonder. For a love so pure, so transformative, to exist in the world and spread out like this? Jack leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I think it's happening, right here, right now." Before Anna could respond, a familiar voice interrupted their moment. Emma and Lucas had caught up with them, both with wide grins plastered on their faces. "Hey, lovebirds," Emma teased. "We were wondering where you disappeared to. Everything okay?" Jack chuckled, pulling Anna a little closer. "Everything's more than okay. We were just taking a moment to appreciate how far we've come." Lucas grinned. "Well, you two certainly deserve a moment. This Christmas has been magical. But I think we might be onto something even bigger. Wait till you see the ideas we have for the Ripple movement next year." Anna couldn't help but smile at the enthusiasm of her friends. As they returned to the warmth of the town square, surrounded by laughter, love, and a sense of purpose, Anna felt certain of one thing. This was just the beginning. The Ripple movement was gaining momentum, and with Jack by her side, they would face whatever came next together. And as the evening continued, with the starry sky above and the glow of Christmas lights surrounding them, Anna felt a sense of peace settle into her heart. This was what they had been working toward. A world filled with kindness, love, and miracles, both big and small. The Christmas miracle was unfolding right before their eyes. Chapter 10. Puzzles in the Falling Snow. The snow had started to fall in soft, swirling flakes, dusting the cobblestone streets of Willow Creek with a thin veil of white. The Christmas lights glowed brighter as night settled in, and the air seemed to hum with quiet energy. The letter to Santa swap had come to a close, but the magic of the event lingered in the crisp winter air. People began to slowly make their way home, their hearts a little lighter and their spirits lifted by the kindness that filled the square. Anna, Jack, Emma, and Lucas lingered near the base of the oak tree, their footsteps crunching in the fresh snow. The atmosphere was peaceful, the bustle of the evening finally giving way to the serenity that often came with the first snow of the season. But Anna's thoughts were consumed with the letter she had received. She had tucked it carefully into her coat pocket, and despite the warmth of the festivities around her, she felt a pull to read it. Something inside her told her that this letter, the one she had unknowingly exchanged, was not just any ordinary wish. It held something deeper, something she couldn't quite explain. "Are you going to open it?" Jack asked, noticing the way Anna kept glancing at her pocket. His voice was playful, but there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Anna hesitated, her fingers brushing over the envelope. "I think so," she said quietly, her voice almost lost beneath the sound of the swirling wind. She carefully pulled the letter from her pocket, unfolding the crisp, snowflake-embellished paper. The handwriting was neat and elegant, a bold yet fluid script that seemed to dance across the page. As her eyes scanned the words, she felt a mixture of surprise and intrigue. "Dear Santa," the letter began, "I know this might seem strange, but I'm not asking for any presents this year. I don't want toys or clothes, or anything that can be wrapped up with a bow. Instead, I want something more precious, something that can't be bought or sold. Anna's heart skipped a beat. There was something so profound in these first few lines. She paused for a moment, glancing at her friends, who were now gathered around her, their curiosity piqued. I want the people in my life to feel truly seen, to know that they matter. I want to give them the gift of kindness, the gift of hope, and the gift of knowing that someone cares. I want the world to be a little softer, a little more understanding. Can you make that happen, Santa? Can you help me give this to the people I love most? The words struck Anna deeply. The wish wasn't for anything material. It wasn't about personal gain or desires. It was about others, about spreading love and compassion, about making the world a better place. She looked up from the letter, meeting Jack's eyes. He seemed just as taken aback as she was. "That's incredible," Emma whispered. "Who wrote this?" Anna turned the letter over, looking for a signature, but there was nothing. No name, no indication of who had penned the wish. It was as if the person who had written it didn't want any recognition, didn't want anyone to know. But why? Anna's mind raced, trying to piece together the mystery. "Maybe we should ask Mrs. Jennings," Lucas suggested, his voice thoughtful. "She's been in charge of the swap for years. She might know who wrote it." Anna nodded, tucking the letter back into her pocket. "Yeah, maybe. But I don't know. There's something about this letter. It feels like it was meant for me to read, like it's pointing me towards something important." The group stood in silence for a moment, their breath hanging in the cold air, as they tried to make sense of the words they had just read. The letter was clearly a wish for others, a wish that transcended the usual material desires that children often asked for. And yet, there was something unspoken in the request, a quiet plea for the world to be a better place. "Well," Jack said, breaking the silence, "I think it's clear that whoever wrote this letter has a lot of heart. It's exactly what Christmas should be about, right?" Anna nodded, feeling a sense of warmth spread through her chest. The letter had ignited something inside her, something beyond the excitement of Christmas presents or holiday decorations. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest gifts weren't the ones wrapped in shiny paper, but the ones that came from the heart. "Let's make sure we're part of that kindness," Anna said softly, her voice full of resolve. "This letter might be a sign for us to do more, to help others the way this person wants to. Maybe that's the true magic of Christmas." Lucas grinned. "I'm in." Emma and Jack exchanged a look before nodding, their expressions equally determined. The four friends, who had spent countless holidays together, now felt a new sense of purpose. The letter to Santa swap had done more than just bring them closer to the Christmas spirit. It had given them a reason to spread kindness, to honor the wish of the unknown letter writer. As they made their way back through the snowy streets, the cold air nipping at their cheeks, Anna's mind continued to swirl with the words from the letter. She didn't know who had written it, or why it had found its way to her, but one thing was certain. This Christmas, the town of Willow Creek would be filled with more than just lights and decorations. It would be filled with the magic of kindness, of giving not for what we can get, but for what we can give. And as the stars twinkled above, casting their soft glow over the quiet streets, Anna felt the weight of the letter's message settle in her heart. This Christmas, there would be no greater gift than making the world a little softer, a little more compassionate, one small act of kindness at a time. Chapter 11. The Gift of Curiosity. The days following the letter to Santa swap seemed to stretch out in a blur of snowy mornings and starry evenings. Willow Creek was blanketed in a thick layer of snow, and the streets sparkled with the glow of Christmas lights that twinkled like 1,000 tiny stars. Yet beneath the festive decorations and the familiar hum of holiday cheer, something new was stirring. The magic of the Christmas season had taken on a deeper meaning, and Anna and her friends couldn't shake the feeling that the wish from the letter they had received was meant to be more than just a passing thought. It was a call to action. As the days rolled on, the town's spirit of giving seemed to grow. The streets were filled with people, families out shopping, friends gathering for coffee, and children building snowmen and ice skating on the pond. But amid the usual hustle and bustle, there was a noticeable shift. People seemed kinder to one another. Smiles were exchanged more freely, and random acts of generosity popped up at every corner. At first, Anna thought it was just the usual holiday spirit taking hold, the sense of goodwill that came naturally with Christmas. But soon, she realized it was something deeper, something more intentional. The magic from the letter, the one with no signature, had begun to ripple through the town in ways no one could have expected. One cold December afternoon, Anna, Jack, Emma, and Lucas were gathered at the local cafe, sipping hot cocoa and watching the snowflakes drift lazily past the window. The cafe was cozy, with the smell of fresh-baked gingerbread cookies and cinnamon filling the air. It was the perfect spot to escape the chill and reflect on everything that had happened since the letter to Santa swap. "I've been noticing it too," Emma said, stirring her drink absently. "People are doing more for each other. Just the other day, Mrs. Foster from the bakery gave me a free loaf of bread. She said it was for the spirit of Christmas, and when I went to pay, she just smiled and waved me off. No reason, just kindness." Lucas nodded. "Yeah, and I saw Mr. Thompson shovel Mrs. Harris's driveway without even being asked. He just did it. I think this is more than just coincidence. It's like the letter is spreading its magic." Anna felt a warmth in her chest as her friend spoke. It was clear they had all felt it, the subtle change in the air, the way people were starting to care a little bit more. But Anna still couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story, something they hadn't yet uncovered. The letter had been so specific in its wish for kindness, for the world to become a little softer. Could it be that the ripple effect they were seeing was somehow connected to it? "I think we should do something," Anna said, her voice soft but filled with determination. "Something to keep the magic going, to really make the wish from the letter come true." Jack raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" "Well," Anna began, "what if we organize something? A community event where everyone can come together and do small acts of kindness for one another. We could ask people to write down their wishes for someone else, something they want to give, not receive, and then we can exchange them. It doesn't have to be anything big, just a simple gesture, something meaningful." Lucas's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. We could even make it a fundraiser for the local shelter. You know, the one that helps families in need during the holidays. Everyone could contribute in their own way." Emma smiled, her eyes shining. "I love that. We could have a kindness wall, where people can post notes with their good deeds or wishes for others. That way, it'll keep growing." Anna felt her heart swell with pride as her friends began to brainstorm. They had all been so inspired by the letter's wish that they were eager to turn it into something tangible, something that would touch the entire town. It was a big idea, but one that seemed to fit the spirit of the season perfectly. As they talked, the snow continued to fall outside, each flake a tiny, unique reminder of the beauty in the world. Anna knew that they couldn't do it alone. They would need the help of the entire town to make this idea a reality. But somehow, deep inside, she felt certain that they could do it, that the ripple of kindness that had begun with the mysterious letter was only the beginning. By the end of the afternoon, the plan was set in motion. Anna and her friends would organize a Day of Kindness event, inviting the entire town to participate. They would gather at the town hall, and everyone could contribute something small, a note of encouragement, a kind gesture for a neighbor, a donation to the shelter. There would be hot cocoa and music, and a space for everyone to write their wishes for others on the kindness wall. As the group made their way back out into the crisp evening air, Anna felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced before. The letter had set something in motion, a spark of goodwill that was quickly turning into a flame. And this flame, she realized, could burn brightly far beyond the holiday season. The days leading up to the event were filled with excitement and anticipation. Word spread quickly about the Day of Kindness, and soon the entire town was buzzing with ideas. People who had never spoken to each other before began to collaborate on small acts of goodwill. The local businesses offered to donate supplies for the event, and even the town's mayor, who was usually too busy for anything outside of his official duties, agreed to help set up the kindness wall. As the day arrived, Willow Creek looked like something straight out of a Christmas postcard. The streets were lined with freshly fallen snow, and the twinkling lights that decorated the trees and storefronts cast a magical glow over the town. The sound of laughter and holiday music filled the air as families gathered in the town hall, eager to participate in the Day of Kindness. Anna, Jack, Emma, and Lucas stood near the front of the room, watching as people wrote their wishes and pinned them to the kindness wall. There were wishes for health, for happiness, for peace, and for love. Some were simple, like "I wish for a smile from a stranger," while others were more personal, like "I wish for my family to find joy again after losing our home." The wall grew more colorful with each passing hour, a testament to the collective spirit of the town. And as Anna looked around at the smiling faces, the laughter echoing through the hall, she knew that the letter, whoever it had come from, had done exactly what it had set out to do. It had spread kindness, hope, and a sense of connection. The ripple of change had begun, and Anna felt that, in some small way, she and her friends had helped make it happen. And as the day drew to a close, with the last of the wishes pinned to the wall and the final cups of cocoa served, Anna looked up at the stars. They twinkled brightly above, each one a reminder that sometimes the greatest gifts are the ones we give to others, the ones that cannot be wrapped or bought, but are instead shared freely from the heart. In that moment, Anna knew that the magic of the letter would live on long after the holiday season had passed. It wasn't just the spirit of Christmas that had changed Willow Creek. It was the spirit of kindness, the kind that could last all year long. Chapter 12. A Compass Without a Map. January arrived with a biting cold that swept across Willow Creek, a stark contrast to the warmth and magic of the holiday season that had just passed. The snow was still deep and the streets sparkled with the remnants of the Christmas lights, which, though turned off, continued to glimmer faintly in the fading daylight. But beneath the still beauty of winter, something else lingered. The feeling that the town had changed irrevocably for the better. The ripple of kindness that had begun with the mysterious letter was far from over. The Day of Kindness had been a resounding success. The event had brought together people from every corner of Willow Creek, united by the simple yet powerful idea of giving selflessly, of creating a community where love and care were at the heart of everything. The kindness wall had overflowed with notes, some joyful, some filled with deep longing, but all of them infused with a shared spirit of hope. Even after the event ended, the ripple continued to grow. Small acts of kindness became a regular occurrence. The woman at the grocery store who paid for the elderly man's groceries, the child who helped a friend build a snow fort, the quiet smile exchanged between strangers on a bus. It was as though the letter had unlocked something in the town's soul, a deep well of compassion that had been waiting to be tapped. But while the changes were evident to everyone, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something more to discover. The letter had been so clear in its message, its plea for kindness, but it had also been enigmatic in its own way. Who had written it? And why had it found its way into her hands, out of all the others? As the days passed, Anna found herself thinking more and more about the letter's mysterious author. She knew the magic of Christmas had played its part, but something about the letter felt like it had a deeper, more personal connection to her. She sat in her room one chilly January evening, the flickering light of a candle casting dancing shadows on the walls, her thoughts swirling around like the snowflakes outside her window. She pulled the letter from the drawer where she had kept it safe since that fateful night. It was no longer crisp and new but well-worn, its edges slightly frayed. She read it again, running her fingers over the familiar words that had moved her so deeply. I want the people in my life to feel truly seen, to know that they matter. I want to give them the gift of kindness, the gift of hope, and the gift of knowing that someone cares. Anna sighed, her mind racing. Who could have written it? Who had this deep understanding of the power of kindness, this desire to make the world better? She felt a strange connection to the words, as if they were speaking directly to her, urging her to uncover something she didn't fully understand yet. The next day, she gathered her friends, Jack, Emma, and Lucas, at the local cafe, their usual meeting spot. The warmth inside was a welcome contrast to the cold outside, and the smell of fresh coffee and pastries filled the air. As they settled into a booth by the window, Anna could see that they, too, had been feeling the lingering effects of the day of kindness. "Do you ever wonder who wrote that letter?" Anna asked, her voice quiet but filled with curiosity. Jack looked up from his hot chocolate. "You still haven't figured it out?" Anna shook her head. "I can't stop thinking about it. It feels like it's connected to something bigger, but I can't put my finger on it." Emma glanced around the cafe, her brow furrowing in thought. "Maybe it's someone who's been around all along, but we just don't know them in the way we think we do. Maybe it's someone who's been quietly doing good in their own way, not for attention, but because it's just who they are." Lucas leaned forward, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "What if it's someone we've known for years? Someone in the town who we never thought could be behind something like this?" Anna nodded slowly, considering the idea. Willow Creek was a small town, and it was possible that someone had been hiding in plain sight, quietly spreading kindness and joy without anyone realizing it. But who? The possibilities seemed endless, yet no one immediately came to mind. She couldn't help but feel that the answer was right there, just out of reach. "What if we went on a little quest?" Anna suggested, her voice suddenly full of determination. "What if we tried to find out who wrote it? Not because we want to thank them or make a big deal out of it, but because maybe there's something we can learn from them. Something we're missing." Emma's eyes lit up. "I like that idea. We've already done so much to spread kindness, but maybe there's more we could do. More we could learn." Jack grinned. "All right, so what's the plan? We start asking around? Interviewing people in town?" "Exactly," Anna said, her excitement growing. "But we can't just ask directly. We have to pay attention, see who's still spreading kindness in ways that aren't obvious. Maybe the person who wrote the letter isn't looking for recognition, but they're still doing small things behind the scenes." The friends agreed, and so their quest began. Over the next few days, they started paying closer attention to the people around them. They observed the subtle acts of kindness happening in the town, the small gestures that seemed to go unnoticed by most but had the power to change someone's day. They kept their eyes open for anyone who seemed to be quietly creating ripples of goodwill, just as the letter had. At first, their search seemed fruitless. No one they spoke to seemed to know anything about the author. But then, one afternoon, as they were walking down Main Street, Anna noticed something that made her stop in her tracks. It was a small, handwritten sign in the window of a modest little shop called the Paper Sparrow, a quaint stationery store tucked between two larger buildings. The sign simply read, "A small act of kindness. Pay it forward." Anna felt a surge of recognition. It was like a spark had been lit in her chest. The Paper Sparrow. She had passed by this shop countless times, but she had never really paid attention to it. Now, though, something about it felt significant. She motioned for her friends to follow her inside. The shop was warm and inviting, the scent of old paper and ink mixing with the faint aroma of freshly brewed tea. Behind the counter stood an elderly woman, her silver hair tied in a loose bun, her eyes twinkling behind round spectacles. She greeted them with a smile as they entered. "Welcome, dears. What can I do for you today?" she asked, her voice soft and kind. Anna hesitated, but then something told her to speak up. "I saw your sign outside," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. "What does it mean? Pay it forward." The woman's smile grew wider, and for a moment, Anna thought she saw something in her eyes, something that spoke of years of untold stories and quiet wisdom. "Well," the woman began, her voice tinged with a hint of mystery, "sometimes kindness is like a thread. When you pull on it, you never know how far it might go. People forget that one small act, one little gesture, can change everything. And sometimes, it's not about who's doing the giving. It's about creating a space where kindness can bloom in unexpected ways." Anna's heart skipped a beat. There it was again. The same message from the letter, the same desire for kindness and connection. She felt a sudden realization wash over her. "I think I understand," Anna said softly. "Thank you." The woman nodded, her smile deepening. "Sometimes, you just have to trust that the right person will find their way." Anna left the shop with a sense of clarity that she hadn't had before. She didn't know for sure if the elderly woman had written the letter, but somehow, she felt certain that she was a part of the bigger picture, one that Anna was beginning to understand. It wasn't about finding one specific person. It was about recognizing that kindness was everywhere, in everyone, if you just knew where to look. And with that, Anna realized that the letter's magic wasn't just in its words. It was in the people who lived those words every day. Chapter 13. Frozen Echoes of the Past. February rolled into Willow Creek with the soft warmth of a late winter thaw. Yet the magic that had begun with the mysterious letter lingered in the air like the last note of a beautiful song. The snow that once blanketed the town was now reduced to small patches, and the trees, bare and skeletal, reached toward the sky with a sense of quiet promise. Anna, Jack, Emma, and Lucas continued their quest to uncover the identity of the author of the letter, but as the days passed, they began to realize that their search had changed direction. What had started as an investigation had transformed into something deeper, a journey of self-discovery, of understanding how the ripple of kindness had truly taken root in Willow Creek. Anna sat on the porch of her house one chilly February afternoon, watching the clouds drift lazily across the sky. The world was quieter now, without the bustle of Christmas, but it felt more serene, as though everything was settling into a new rhythm. Her mind wandered back to the day she had first read the letter, and she marveled at how everything had unfolded since then. Willow Creek, once a place she had taken for granted, had become a town filled with possibility, where small gestures had the power to change lives. The ripple of kindness was still going strong. It had grown beyond the day of kindness, woven into the fabric of everyday life. The community had continued to offer help to the local shelter, and the kindness wall at the town hall was still full of notes and wishes. People were more open, more generous, and more willing to help one another. But despite all the changes, there was still one lingering question that refused to fade. Who had written the letter? As much as Anna, Jack, Emma, and Lucas had tried to follow the trail, they hadn't found any concrete answers. They had spoken with countless people in the town, neighbors, shopkeepers, even the mayor. But no one seemed to know anything about the mysterious letter or its author. It was as if the person who had sparked the change had simply disappeared into the background, leaving behind only the echo of their kindness. But then, one evening, as Anna sat with her friends at the cafe, sipping a warm cup of cocoa and watching the evening light turn to dusk, Emma said something that struck a chord deep within Anna's heart. "I think we've been looking at this all wrong," Emma said quietly, her eyes thoughtful as she gazed out the window at the darkening sky. "Maybe it's not about finding one person. Maybe it's about seeing that the letter wasn't just meant for one person. It was meant for all of us. The words hung in the air, and for a long moment, no one spoke. Anna felt a quiet realization settle over her. Emma was right. The letter hadn't been a direct message to one person. It had been a call to everyone in Willow Creek, a challenge to see the world through the lens of kindness, to recognize the power of small, everyday gestures. Lucas nodded slowly. It's like the letter sparked something in all of us. Maybe it wasn't meant to be solved like a mystery. It was meant to inspire. Maybe the author is everyone. Anna's heart leapt as the pieces began to fall into place. It wasn't about discovering the identity of one person who had written the letter. The true magic was in the community that had risen to the call, in the way the letter had sparked something within each individual in Willow Creek, something they hadn't even known was there. The next few days were a whirlwind of realization. Anna, Jack, Emma, and Lucas found themselves more connected to the town than ever before, more aware of the quiet ways in which people were showing kindness. They saw the elderly couple down the street who took turns shoveling each other's driveway, the teacher who stayed after school to help a struggling student, and the postman who left small notes of encouragement with the letters he delivered. Everywhere they looked, they saw the ripple of kindness expanding, growing, and intertwining with the lives of everyone around them. One afternoon, as Anna walked through the park with Jack, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for everything she had experienced. She thought about the letter, about how it had changed everything, and how, in its quiet way, it had led her to understand something much deeper than the simple act of spreading kindness. "Do you think we'll ever know who wrote it?" Jack asked, breaking Anna from her thoughts. "I mean, we've been searching for so long, but maybe we've been looking in the wrong places." Anna smiled softly. "Maybe we don't need to know. Maybe the letter's real magic is in how it's brought us all together, how it's made us see the world differently." Jack raised an eyebrow, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You're right. We don't need to find the author. The letter's message is already alive in everyone here." As the days stretched into weeks, Anna began to understand something even more profound. The author of the letter wasn't a singular figure. The message was one that could live within anyone. It wasn't just about one person writing words on a piece of paper. It was about the collective actions of everyone in the town, coming together to create a community where kindness was the norm, where people looked out for each other without expecting anything in return. In the quiet moments of reflection, Anna realized that the letter's true gift wasn't just the acts of kindness that had followed. It was the shift in perspective it had caused. It had made people look beyond themselves, beyond their individual lives, and see the bigger picture. It had shown them that the smallest actions could have the greatest impact, that even the quietest of gestures could set off a ripple that would extend far beyond their understanding. One evening, as Anna sat with her family by the fire, she thought back to the letter and the journey it had set her on. The letter had been a catalyst for something much larger, a force that had woven its way through every part of Willow Creek. And though she would never know for sure who had written it, she understood now that the mystery wasn't important. The magic was in the change it had inspired. As the fire crackled in the hearth, her parents looked over at her with smiles that were warm with love and pride. They had watched her grow, not just as a daughter, but as someone who understood the power of kindness and the beauty of selflessness. They could see the change in her, the way she now saw the world with a deeper appreciation, and they knew it was because of the letter. The spark that had ignited something in her, something that would continue to grow long after the season of giving had passed. The town of Willow Creek had transformed, and Anna knew that, in some way, they were all better for it. The spirit of kindness, the ripple that had begun with a single letter, had taken root in the hearts of everyone in the town. And that was the true magic of the holiday season. Not in the gifts or the decorations, but in the way people came together, in the way they cared for one another, and in the way they shared their hearts without hesitation. As the night deepened and the stars twinkled above, Anna smiled to herself, a deep sense of peace settling in her chest. The letter had done its work, and the ripple it had started would continue to flow, touching lives far beyond Willow Creek. And in the end, that was enough. Chapter 14. A Wish in the Winter Wind. Spring came slowly to Willow Creek, its arrival marked by the first buds of crocuses poking through the thawing ground, and the soft hum of birds returning from warmer climates. The chill of winter had receded, but the warmth of kindness still lingered in the town. There was a sense of renewal in the air, a promise that the changes set in motion by the mysterious letter would continue to blossom in the months to come. Anna could feel it in every corner of Willow Creek, in every friendly nod exchanged on the streets, and in every moment of quiet generosity she witnessed. It had been months since the day of kindness, and the townspeople had embraced the idea of living with intention, paying forward the good they had received. The ripple that had started with a single letter had spread far and wide, and now it had become a part of the town's very identity. Yet, even as the town flourished under the warmth of this new sense of community, Anna couldn't help but wonder if there was more still to be discovered, more lessons to be learned, more hearts to be touched. The question that had plagued her for so long, who had written the letter, still lingered in the back of her mind. It wasn't that Anna needed an answer anymore. She had come to understand that the mystery of the letter wasn't about uncovering a singular truth, but about understanding how the smallest acts of kindness could grow into something monumental. Still, she found herself reflecting on the origins of the letter, on the person who had written those words that had sparked so much change. Was the author someone from Willow Creek? Or had they come from somewhere else, perhaps just passing through? Had the letter been meant for her, or had it been a message to the whole town? One warm afternoon in early April, as Anna walked along Main Street with Jack and Emma, she noticed something different. The town felt lighter somehow. There was laughter spilling from the windows of the cafe. Children were playing hopscotch on the sidewalks, and the local bookstore was hosting an outdoor reading for the town's kids. The air itself seemed to hum with energy, with a sense of possibility. It was as if every person in the town had found a piece of themselves in the kindness they had shared, and now they were living it out. "This is amazing," Emma said, looking around with a smile. "I can't believe how much things have changed. It's like everyone is just happier." "It's the letter," Anna said, almost absent-mindedly. "It's like it unlocked something in everyone." Jack nodded. "Yeah, but I think it unlocked something in us, too. I mean, we were the ones who went searching for answers, and in the end, we found something we didn't even know we were looking for. I still think it's strange that we haven't figured out who wrote it," Anna mused, glancing around the street. "I mean, shouldn't there be some sign? A clue or something?" "Maybe the clue is that there's no clue," Jack said, with a grin. "Maybe it's not about who wrote it. Maybe it's about what the letter made us do." Anna thought about this for a moment, and then she smiled. "You're right. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's about the message itself, the idea that kindness can change everything." As they strolled down the street, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere of Willow Creek, Anna's gaze landed on a familiar figure across the square. It was Mrs. Finch, the elderly woman who ran the small thrift store near the edge of town. Mrs. Finch had always been quiet, keeping to herself for the most part, but ever since the day of kindness, she had become an unexpected beacon of goodwill in the community. She helped organize food drives, volunteered at the animal shelter, and had even started offering free sewing lessons to anyone who wanted to learn. Anna had always admired Mrs. Finch's quiet generosity, but it wasn't until now that she realized just how much the woman had changed, or how much her small acts of kindness had spread to others. Mrs. Finch had become a living example of the very message of the letter. As the three friends approached her, Mrs. Finch greeted them with a warm smile. "Hello, dears," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Out enjoying the beautiful day, I see?" "We are," Anna said, smiling back. "We were just talking about how different everything feels now. The whole town seems so full of life." Mrs. Finch nodded thoughtfully. "It's funny, isn't it? How something so small, like a simple letter, can make such a difference." Anna's heart skipped a beat. There it was again, the letter. She hadn't meant to bring it up, but the words slipped out without her even thinking about it. She watched Mrs. Finch closely, searching for any hint that the woman might know more than she was letting on. Mrs. Finch, however, only smiled gently. "I think the true magic of the letter is that it found its way into the right hands. And those hands, your hands, Anna, did something incredible with it." "Do you mean the day of kindness?" Anna asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Or something else?" Mrs. Finch chuckled softly. "Oh dear, I think it's more than that. The day of kindness was just the beginning. What you and your friends did, what the whole town did, wasn't about one event. It was about what happened after, about how you all kept the spirit alive." Anna looked at her friends, then back at Mrs. Finch. "But don't you think we're missing something? We still don't know who wrote the letter." Mrs. Finch's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Anna thought she saw something flicker behind them. Something almost knowing, almost mysterious. But it was gone in an instant. "Perhaps that's the point, Anna," Mrs. Finch said, her voice quiet but filled with warmth. "Perhaps the mystery wasn't meant to be solved. Perhaps the true gift was in learning that the power to change the world is already within us, that the kindness we give to others doesn't need to come from one person, but from all of us." Anna stood still for a moment, her thoughts swirling. She understood what Mrs. Finch was saying. It wasn't about one person writing a letter. It was about the collective effort of everyone in Willow Creek, of all the small acts of kindness that had added up to something truly extraordinary. The author of the letter was not one individual. It was the town itself, the community that had embraced the message and carried it forward. "Thank you, Mrs. Finch," Anna said softly, her heart swelling with understanding. "I think I get it now." Mrs. Finch smiled. "I'm glad, dear. Sometimes, we all need a little reminder that the magic isn't in the grand gestures, but in the everyday acts of love and care." As Anna, Jack, and Emma continued their walk through Willow Creek, Anna couldn't help but feel a deep sense of peace settle within her. She had spent so much time searching for the author of the letter, but now, she realized that the true author was everyone. It was the collective kindness of the people in Willow Creek that had transformed the town, that had turned a simple piece of paper into something that had changed hearts and lives. The ripple of kindness was still flowing, still growing, and Anna knew that as long as the people of Willow Creek continued to share that kindness, the magic would never fade. And with that, Anna made a silent promise to herself and to everyone she met, to keep the ripple going, to continue the work of the letter, and to never forget that sometimes the smallest actions could make the biggest difference. Chapter 15. The Silent Stars Glow. As summer unfurled its warm, golden arms around Willow Creek, Anna found herself standing at the edge of the old bridge that stretched across the gently flowing creek, watching the sunlight dance on the water. The once barren trees were now lush with green, their branches swaying in the breeze, and the flowers in the park had burst into an explosion of color. It was the kind of day that made everything feel right, peaceful, full of promise, and gently brimming with the memories of the months that had passed since the mysterious letter had first appeared. The town had continued to flourish. It was as if the ripple of kindness, the magic that had been sparked by that one fateful letter, had woven itself into the very fabric of life in Willow Creek. People were more generous, more connected, and more compassionate. It wasn't something they had to work at anymore. It had simply become a part of who they were, something that came naturally. What had started as a small act of kindness had become a new way of life, a way that Anna, Jack, Emma, and Lucas had come to cherish deeply. But even as the town thrived under the influence of kindness, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. It wasn't that she wasn't grateful for the changes, she was, but she had come to realize that the mystery of the letter, the person who had written it, still lingered in her mind. It wasn't about solving a puzzle anymore, but about understanding the bigger picture. The letter had changed everything, and Anna had come to see it as more than just an isolated event. It was the beginning of something larger, something that had the potential to stretch beyond Willow Creek, beyond what any of them could imagine. As she gazed out over the water, Anna's thoughts drifted back to the day of kindness and all that had come after. It had been a day of transformation, yes, but it was the days that followed that had really shaped her understanding of what the letter had truly meant. The kindness wasn't just about one day. It was about every day after that, about how the community had continued to nurture that spirit and how it had found its way into the hearts of each individual, shaping their actions and their interactions with one another. "What are you thinking about?" Jack's voice broke through her reverie, and Anna turned to find him standing a few steps behind her, a curious look on his face. "Oh, just everything," Anna said, smiling softly. "It's hard to believe how much has changed, isn't it? It feels like just yesterday we were all trying to figure out who wrote that letter, and now, well, now it feels like we've all become part of the letter, in a way." Jack nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "Yeah, it's crazy. It's like we're all authors of the same story now. We each have a part to play, and each act of kindness adds to the whole." Anna smiled at him, grateful for his insight. "Exactly. I used to think that finding the person who wrote the letter would give me all the answers. But now, I think the letter was just a spark. The real magic is in what's happening now, in how we're all living the message." Jack smiled back, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, something Anna couldn't quite place. It was as if he, too, was grappling with something. A question, a thought, a realization. He hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I've been thinking about something too," he said, his voice quieter now. "I mean, we've all changed, right? But I don't think it's just about the kindness we've shared. I think it's about the people we've become. It's like we've all become part of something bigger, something we can't really explain. The letter might have been the start, but we've all added our own threads to the tapestry." Anna's heart skipped a beat. She had never thought about it that way before, but now that Jack had said it, she could see it so clearly. Willow Creek wasn't just a town that had experienced a temporary wave of kindness. No, it was a town that had woven the letter's message into its very being, into the lives of every person who called it home. It was a tapestry of time, of people, and of actions, each thread contributing to the larger picture that had formed over the months. Emma and Lucas appeared then, walking hand in hand across the grassy path that led to the bridge. Their faces were lit with the same quiet contentment that Anna had come to recognize in herself. They had all changed, in ways both subtle and profound, and now, as they stood together on the bridge, they understood that the kindness they had nurtured was no longer something they had to work for. It was simply who they were. "I think we're ready for something new," Lucas said, his voice full of quiet excitement as he gazed out over the creek. Anna turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, a grin spreading across his face. "I don't know. Just something bigger. Something that takes all this goodwill and spreads it beyond Willow Creek. Maybe it's time for us to take what we've learned and share it with other towns, other people. Maybe it's time for the ripple to become a wave." Anna's breath caught in her throat. The idea was both simple and profound. What if the ripple they had created in Willow Creek wasn't meant to stay contained here? What if the lessons they had learned, the kindness they had shared, could reach beyond the town's borders? What if Willow Creek could become a model for the world? A shining example of how small acts of kindness could change everything. Jack, Emma, and Lucas all looked at her, their eyes filled with the same sense of possibility. They were ready for this. They had seen firsthand how kindness could change a community, and now they were ready to see how it could change the world. Anna felt a surge of hope swell in her chest. For so long, she had been searching for something more. Something beyond the letter, beyond the mystery, beyond the changes in Willow Creek. And now, in this quiet moment on the bridge, she realized what that something more was. It wasn't about finding answers or solving mysteries. It was about continuing the work that had begun, about taking the lessons of kindness and compassion and spreading them wherever they could. It was about becoming part of a larger story, one that would stretch across towns, countries, and even continents, creating a web of connection and goodwill that would never be broken. She smiled, looking at her friends, feeling the weight of the promise they had made to each other. The ripple wasn't just an event, it was a movement, one that would continue to grow and evolve. They had the power to spread that message of kindness, to inspire others to join in, to create a world where every small act of love and care contributed to something larger, something beautiful. "It's time," Anna said, her voice steady and full of conviction. "Let's share the ripple with the world." And in that moment, standing on the bridge with her friends, Anna knew that they were ready. The journey had just begun, and the tapestry they were weaving would stretch far beyond Willow Creek, touching lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. But they were ready to take that first step, to add their own thread to the larger story of kindness, to create a world where love and compassion were as common as the air they breathed. The ripple of kindness was no longer just a spark. It was a fire, one that would light the way for generations to come. Chapter 16. Unraveling a Holiday Mystery. It was a crisp autumn morning when Anna received a letter. It arrived in the same way as all the letters in the past months had. Unexpected, but somehow inevitable. The moment she saw the envelope, the neat, flowing script on the front, she knew it was no ordinary letter. The last time she had received a letter like this, it had set in motion everything that had happened since. Everything that had changed Willow Creek. She stood frozen for a moment, holding the envelope in her hands, her heart racing. The address on the front was simple, no return address, just Anna's name, written carefully in ink. She had to know, of course. Who wouldn't? What could this letter possibly hold? As she slid the letter open, her fingers trembling slightly, she read the message inside. To Anna, the spark of kindness in Willow Creek. We have watched your town blossom, watched the ripple grow into a force that touches so many. You have done something extraordinary, something that is just the beginning. The path that you walk is a path of many, and the ripple you've created must now expand beyond your town to many more. This letter is to guide you. You are not alone in this work. Reach out, and you will find others who share your purpose. The journey ahead will require patience, persistence, and a willingness to learn. There are many who are waiting, ready to join the wave. But you must take the next step. Do not be afraid to lead, for the world needs the light you have ignited. With hope. The Keepers of the Ripple. Anna's breath caught as she finished reading. Her mind raced, and her heart fluttered with both excitement and uncertainty. The Keepers of the Ripple. The letter was clear. There were others out there, others who shared the same vision, who had been watching, waiting for this moment. The work they had begun in Willow Creek, this wave of kindness that had touched their town, was only the beginning of something much larger. It was a call to action. It was time to expand, to connect with others, to take the next step. She could almost feel the weight of the responsibility resting on her shoulders. But there was no hesitation. There was only a sense of destiny, of purpose, that filled her. This wasn't just her journey anymore. It was the journey of everyone in Willow Creek, and perhaps it was the journey of those who had yet to join them, the people who were waiting to be a part of something bigger. She sat down at the kitchen table, the letter still in her hands, the words spinning in her head. She needed to share this with Jack, Emma, and Lucas. They had all been part of this from the very beginning, each of them contributing to the movement in their own way. They needed to know that the ripple was ready to move beyond the borders of Willow Creek, that their journey had only just begun. Anna stood up, almost too quickly, and grabbed her phone. She dialed Jack's number first, her fingers barely able to keep up with her racing thoughts. She needed to speak to him, to tell him about the letter, to make sense of it together. "Hello?" Jack answered on the third ring. "Jack, you won't believe this," Anna said, her voice barely controlled with excitement. "I just got a letter. It's from the keepers of the ripple." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Anna could almost hear Jack's mind working, processing the information. "Wait, what? The keepers of the ripple? Are you serious?" "I'm not joking," she said, a small laugh escaping her. "They wrote that Willow Creek's ripple is just the beginning, that we need to expand it, to reach out to others who share the same purpose. They're out there, Jack. There are people who are waiting for us to make the next move." The excitement in Jack's voice was palpable. "This is huge, Anna. Wow. Okay, so what do we do now? How do we find them? How do we connect with these people?" Anna took a deep breath. "I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out together. I think we're supposed to start by reaching out. The letter said there are others who have already started this journey. We need to find them." "I'm in," Jack said immediately. "This is the next step. We've already changed Willow Creek. Now it's time to share what we've learned with others." "I'm ready." Anna smiled, feeling the weight of the moment, but also a thrilling sense of possibility. This wasn't just about Willow Creek anymore. It was about the entire world. She needed to tell Emma and Lucas, too. They all needed to be a part of this. After a few more minutes of talking, Jack promised to rally the others and meet her at the park later that afternoon. Anna spent the next few hours thinking about what the letter meant. It was clear to her now that the ripple wasn't just for Willow Creek. It was a movement, a global movement, and she was at the forefront of it. The letter hadn't given her all the answers, but it had given her something far more valuable, a sense of direction, a call to action, and it was up to her, and all of them, to answer it. That afternoon, as Anna met with her friends in the park, she could see the excitement mirrored in their faces. They had all been changed by the kindness that had swept through Willow Creek, and now they were ready to take it further. Anna shared the letter with them, and the group listened intently as she read the words aloud. By the time she finished, they were all looking at each other with wide eyes, their hearts beating a little faster. "This is it, isn't it?" Lucas said, his voice full of wonder. "This is what we've been preparing for. We've already started this journey, and now it's time to take it to the next level." "I think we all knew it wasn't just about Willow Creek," Emma added. "We've been talking about this, about how we could make a bigger impact. This is our chance to make that happen." "I agree," Anna said, her voice steady but full of excitement. "We're not just leaders of a town anymore. We're part of something bigger, and we need to reach out to those who share our vision. We need to expand the ripple, make it a movement that spreads far and wide." The group nodded in agreement, and for a moment, they all stood together in silence, as if sensing the magnitude of what lay ahead. It was an exhilarating feeling, knowing that what they had begun in their small town was about to grow into something larger than any of them could have imagined. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the park, Anna felt a deep sense of peace settle within her. The path was uncertain, but that was part of the beauty of it. They didn't need to know exactly where the journey would take them. They just needed to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The ripple had already begun, and they were part of it. And so, As the evening stars began to appear in the sky, Anna and her friends made a silent promise to each other. They would take the next step. They would reach out, connect with others, and expand the wave of kindness they had created in Willow Creek. It was a path of many, one that would lead them to places they hadn't yet dreamed of. But they were ready, and together, they would make sure that the ripple of kindness would never stop. It would grow, spread, and change the world, one small act at a time. Chapter 17. The Treasure Beneath the Tree. The weeks that followed the arrival of the mysterious letter were both thrilling and challenging. Anna, Jack, Emma, and Lucas had come together with a shared determination to carry the message they had received and expand the ripple of kindness beyond the borders of Willow Creek. But, as they soon learned, the path they were embarking on was not as clear-cut as they had hoped. The ripple was real, powerful, and full of potential, but it required more than just enthusiasm and good intentions. It required patience, planning, and a deep understanding of what it meant to lead a movement. It began with small steps. The first thing they did was create a website, a place where people could learn about the Ripple movement, share stories, and connect with others who wanted to make a difference. Anna, with her love of writing and passion for the cause, took charge of the content, sharing stories of how Willow Creek had transformed. Jack, with his tech-savvy nature, worked on the design, ensuring the website was user-friendly and accessible. Emma and Lucas, ever the natural connectors, began reaching out to their friends, family, and even strangers, telling them about the movement and asking them to share it with others. But the response, while enthusiastic, was not as immediate as they had hoped. There were moments of doubt, moments when Anna wondered if the ripple would ever truly spread, moments when it felt as if they were speaking into an empty void. They had received a lot of support from their local community, but what about the people who were meant to join the movement from far beyond Willow Creek? It was one evening, after a long day of planning and outreach, that Anna found herself sitting at the kitchen table, feeling the weight of everything that was still to come. She stared at the glowing screen of her laptop, watching as the number of website visitors slowly ticked upward. It was a steady increase, but it was not the flood of interest she had imagined. The movement had the potential to change the world, but for now, it felt like a whisper. Jack walked into the room, noticing the quiet tension in the air. He paused for a moment, looking at Anna. "What's on your mind?" he asked, sitting down beside her. Anna let out a deep sigh. I don't know, Jack. I thought we'd see more progress by now. We've worked so hard to get this out there, but I'm wondering if it's enough. What if no one else is ready for this? What if they don't care?" Jack placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Anna, we knew this wouldn't be easy. Change takes time, and this isn't about how fast it happens. It's about how meaningful it is. Every person we reach, every connection we make, is a victory. It doesn't matter if it's hundreds or just one person. It's still one more person who's willing to be a part of something bigger. That's what matters." Anna nodded slowly, trying to absorb his words. She had always known that change took time, but the reality of it was harder than she had imagined. She had envisioned a rapid, sweeping change, like the way a single spark could light a fire in an instant. But this was different. The ripple they were creating was more like a slow and steady wave, one that would only grow over time, one small step at a time. Jack stood up, pulling her into a hug. "We've made it this far together. We're not giving up now. We're on the right path." The next morning, Anna received an email that would change everything. It came from a woman named Sarah, someone Anna had never met, someone who had found the Ripple Movement website by accident. The message was simple, but it carried with it the weight of possibility. "I've been following what you and your town have been doing, and I believe in this movement. I've been looking for something like this for a long time. I want to help, to be part of it. I'm ready to take the next step." Anna's heart skipped a beat as she read the email. It wasn't much. but it was the first sign that the ripple was starting to spread. It was the spark they had been waiting for. Sarah wasn't the only one who had been looking for something like this. There were more out there, people who were ready to join the movement, to make their own impact. Anna immediately replied to Sarah, inviting her to a video call to discuss how they could work together. The call was scheduled for the next day, and as Anna sat down in front of her computer, she felt a renewed sense of hope. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The first person who had reached out from outside Willow Creek, someone who was ready to be part of the movement. When the call began, Sarah's face appeared on the screen. She was warm and friendly, with a bright smile that immediately put Anna at ease. They exchanged pleasantries before Anna dove into the conversation. "Thank you for reaching out, Sarah," Anna said, her voice full of gratitude. "It means a lot to know that you're interested in being a part of this. Can you tell me a little more about why you want to join the Ripple movement?" Sarah nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Honestly, I've been feeling like there's something missing in my life. I've always believed in kindness and helping others, but it's hard to find people who share that same belief. I've been searching for something that could bring people together, something bigger than just individual acts of kindness. When I found your website, I felt like I had finally found what I was looking for. I want to help spread this message, to make kindness a way of life, not just for me, but for everyone." Anna's heart swelled with pride and excitement. This was it. This was the start of something bigger. Sarah wasn't just a supporter. She was someone who wanted to be part of the movement, to help it grow. And she wasn't the only one. Sarah's email had been the first, but Anna had no doubt that there were more people out there, waiting for the call to action. Over the next few days, Anna, Jack, Emma, and Lucas worked together to establish a network of people who shared their vision. They began receiving more emails, messages, and phone calls from people like Sarah, people who wanted to help, to be a part of the Ripple movement. The network grew slowly but steadily, like a thread being woven into a larger tapestry. Each new person added to the movement felt like a victory, a confirmation that they were on the right path. Anna began to see that the ripple was not meant to be a wave that came crashing down all at once. It was a movement that would spread quietly, steadily, person by person, until it reached a tipping point, until it became something unstoppable. And then, one afternoon, a surprise arrived. It was a letter, not in the form of an email, but a physical letter, handwritten and addressed to Anna. The handwriting was elegant and precise, and when she opened it, she found a message that took her breath away. "Dear Anna, I have been following your work with great interest. The Ripple movement you've started is inspiring, and I believe it has the potential to change not just your town, but the world. I have seen firsthand the power of kindness to unite people, and I want to help. Please consider this a formal offer to partner with you in this movement. Together, we can do even more. Sincerely, Jonathan Wells, founder of the Global Kindness Initiative." Anna read the letter 3 times, her mind struggling to grasp what she had just read. Jonathan Wells, the founder of the Global Kindness Initiative, was offering to partner with them? This was the opportunity they had been waiting for, the moment when the ripple would finally begin to reach far beyond Willow Creek. It was the beginning of something truly extraordinary. With trembling hands, Anna picked up her phone and immediately called Jack. She needed to share the news, to let him know that the Ripple movement was about to take another giant step forward. "Jack," she said, her voice filled with awe, "we've just received an offer to partner with the Global Kindness Initiative. This is it. The ripple is spreading, and we're a part of something much bigger now." Jack's voice was filled with excitement as he heard the news. "This is incredible, Anna. This is exactly what we needed. This is going to take everything we've built and amplify it 100 times." Anna smiled, her heart swelling with hope. The ripple was no longer just an idea, no longer just a movement in Willow Creek. It was a force that was reaching across the globe, and they were at the heart of it. The first ripple had been cast, and now the world was beginning to feel its effects. Chapter 18. Home at Last. The days that followed Jonathan Wells' offer were a whirlwind of excitement and nervous energy. The partnership with the Global Kindness Initiative, a global organization dedicated to fostering kindness and community engagement, was more than Anna, Jack, Emma, and Lucas could have ever dreamed of. What had started in their small town of Willow Creek was now being recognized on a much larger scale. They were no longer just a group of passionate individuals trying to make a difference. They were part of a worldwide movement that was gaining momentum with each passing day. As soon as the offer came through, Anna and Jack spent hours on the phone, discussing the details, making plans, and trying to wrap their minds around the scope of what they were about to embark on. The Global Kindness Initiative had a vast network, reaching people in dozens of countries, and they wanted to work with Willow Creek to spread their message of kindness and change to communities across the globe. It was an overwhelming opportunity, but Anna could feel the spark of excitement growing within her. The first step was a virtual meeting with Jonathan Wells himself. He had arranged for a Zoom call to discuss the partnership, and Anna could hardly contain her excitement as the time for the meeting drew near. She had seen Jonathan's name in news articles and had admired his work from afar, but to have him reach out to them personally was a dream come true. Jack, Emma, and Lucas were all gathered around her, their faces lit up with anticipation. When the call began, Jonathan appeared on the screen. A middle-aged man with a kind smile and a calm, confident presence. He greeted Anna and her friends warmly, his tone immediately putting them at ease. "Anna, Jack, Emma, Lucas," Jonathan said, his voice filled with genuine warmth. "It's such a pleasure to meet you all. I've been following your work in Willow Creek, and I must say, I'm incredibly impressed. What you've done, what you've started, is exactly the kind of movement the world needs right now." Anna felt a surge of pride, but also a twinge of humility. "Thank you, Jonathan. It means a lot to hear that from you. We've worked really hard, but we know we couldn't have gotten this far without the support of our community." Jonathan nodded. "Exactly. Community is at the heart of everything we do, and what you've created in Willow Creek is a testament to that. The Global Kindness Initiative has been focused on bringing people together through acts of kindness and compassion, but it's not enough to just spread kindness. We need to create lasting change, build bridges between communities, and empower people to act on their values. That's where you come in." The group exchanged glances, their hearts beating faster at the thought of what Jonathan was saying. They had always believed in the power of community, in the idea that small actions could lead to big changes, but hearing it from someone with such global influence made it feel all the more real. "We want to collaborate with you," Jonathan continued. "We believe that Willow Creek can be the model for what's possible. What you've done is proof that kindness can transform a community, but we want to take it further. We want to work with you to create a program that can be implemented in cities and towns all over the world." Anna's mind was racing. "A program? You mean a global initiative?" "Exactly," Jonathan said with a smile. "We want to take the principles you've established in Willow Creek and scale them. We believe that with your leadership and our resources, we can build something that can touch every corner of the globe." The weight of what Jonathan was offering hung in the air. Anna could hardly believe what she was hearing. This was no longer just about their town, no longer just about making Willow Creek a better place. This was about reaching people across continents, inspiring them to embrace kindness, and creating a world where compassion was the norm. Over the next few weeks, the collaboration began to take shape. Jonathan's team at the Global Kindness Initiative provided resources and expertise to help guide Willow Creek's efforts on a global scale. They worked together to create a set of principles and actions, things that could be implemented by communities anywhere, from large cities to small towns. The key was to keep the spirit of the Ripple movement intact, to ensure that kindness was not just a concept, but a tangible, actionable force that could be integrated into people's daily lives. For Anna, the process was both exhilarating and exhausting. She worked closely with Jonathan's team, learning how to craft messages that would resonate with people from all walks of life. Jack, ever the strategist, focused on the logistics of how to implement the program in different places, ensuring that each community could tailor it to their own needs. Emma and Lucas, with their innate ability to connect with others, were tasked with spreading the word, reaching out to local leaders, and building relationships with those who were interested in joining the movement. But despite the excitement, there were moments of doubt. As the scope of the project expanded, so too did the challenges. Anna sometimes found herself overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were trying to accomplish. The world was vast, and there were so many different cultures, communities, and perspectives. Would the principles of kindness that had worked so well in Willow Creek truly resonate on a global scale? Would people in other countries, in different environments, be as open to the message of kindness? One afternoon, after a long meeting with Jonathan's team, Anna sat alone in her room, looking out the window at the familiar streets of Willow Creek. It was hard to imagine that the small town she had grown up in was now at the center of something so much bigger. And yet, in her heart, she knew that they had a chance to make a real difference. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Jack, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. "You look like you could use this," he said, offering one to her. "Thanks," Anna replied, accepting the cup gratefully. She took a sip, letting the warmth of the drink soothe her. I'm starting to feel the weight of all of this, Jack. It's so much bigger than I ever imagined." Jack sat down beside her, his gaze thoughtful. "I get it, but remember, Anna, we didn't start this to change the world all at once. We started this because we believe that small acts of kindness can create a ripple, and that ripple can grow. We've seen it happen in Willow Creek. We've seen it change lives, one person at a time. And now we're giving others the chance to experience that, too." Anna looked at him, her heart full. He was right, of course. They had never set out to change the world in a single moment. They had set out to inspire change, to create a community based on compassion. And that was exactly what they were doing. As the days passed, the Ripple movement began to gain more traction. The program they had developed, now called the Global Ripple Initiative, was being adopted by communities in different parts of the world. Stories poured in from people who had joined the movement, sharing how it had impacted their lives, how it had brought them closer to their neighbors, and how it had inspired them to take action in their own communities. The most heartening part of it all was that the ripple was spreading not just in the cities and towns they had hoped to reach, but in unexpected places as well. In villages in Africa, in towns in South America, and in bustling cities in Europe, people were embracing the idea of kindness as a way of life. They were starting to see that the ripple wasn't just about small gestures. It was about creating lasting change, building stronger, more compassionate communities. Anna received messages from all over the world, thank you notes, stories of success, and accounts of challenges that were being overcome. Each message filled her with gratitude and renewed purpose. She realized that the ripple had already taken on a life of its own. It was no longer something that belonged only to her, Jack, Emma, and Lucas. It belonged to everyone who had embraced it, who had chosen to act on the values of kindness and compassion. And so, as the ripple continued to spread across the globe, Anna knew that their work had only just begun. The world was waking up to the power of kindness, and they were part of something much bigger than they could have ever imagined. The Global Ripple Initiative was no longer just an idea, it was a movement that was changing the world, one small act at a time.